Hey everyone. If you have lost or are in the process of losing a loved one to some kind of prolonged illness, whether it's cancer or something else, this video is for you. When we are dealing with the prolonged loss, not the sudden death, but the loss over time of someone, it can create this experience that we call anticipatory grief, where we're trying to deal with something that hasn't happened yet, and it can be really frustrating and confusing. And honestly, it can create a lot of mess in our lives. Now, my perspective on this is twofold. One, as you know, if you're here on my channel, you know I'm a relationship therapist, and what I don't really talk about much is that my master's research was actually in an area called psycho-oncology, which is basically the psychology of folks who are losing someone or are dying from cancer. So I've got that clinical side of it, but I think more importantly, I've been through it myself. Many years ago, like 10, 15 years ago, I lost my mother to a prolonged cancer battle. And so I know firsthand how difficult it can be and how it can just kind of tear everything apart. And so if any of this resonates for you and your experience, current or past, or maybe you know someone going through it, then I want to talk about some of the things that I've observed that I think probably are not unique to my experience or my observations. And if you can be aware of these things, then when they come up, it may be less shocking, less upsetting for you, because you knew it was coming or you're not surprised by it. And my idea is that then it can make the whole thing easier to manage, okay? So when I sat down to make my notes for this video, and you may see me kind of looking at my notes over here, because I wanted to do this one just a little more freeform today, I came up with 7 things that can kind of come up for a lot of us when we're going through this prolonged grief and loss period with someone we love. So let's just get into those. And of course, at the end, I'll give you a few ideas on ways to manage as well, so stick around for those. The first thing is, I think we can expect waves of emotion of varying degrees and kinds. So sometimes it can be unexpected. You'll be unexpectedly overcome with something, sometimes at fairly inconvenient times, like when you're at work or something. Other times you may be surprised at times that you actually feel pretty good, or maybe you're seeing the humor in things that you don't really understand why you might see the humor in them, but you do. So those waves of emotion and that variability of experience can be fairly profound. And I would say just don't be surprised by that when that happens. That doesn't mean there's something wrong. It just means that we're dealing with something great big, and our psyche has to figure out how to do that. And that's not going to be the same answer day to day, or frankly, even moment to moment. Another thing to expect is that others may not really know what to say or do. People who've not been through it especially can be very uncomfortable with this idea of losing someone that you care about. They can be very uncomfortable with the idea of death and dying. And so they may be very uncomfortable, they may really stumble, and they may say or do the wrong thing, right? And I just don't think we need to be surprised by that when it happens. It doesn't mean you have to excuse it, but I think it sometimes means that people will say and do things that we walk away going, that was really not very helpful. And, that's okay. Again, it's part of the experience, and we all have our different ways that we intersect with that. Kind of related to that is the third thing that I've seen quite a bit, actually, is you may encounter someone who has been through it. And maybe it's someone who hasn't necessarily done all their work to process all of their grief. And so they may sort of turn it to being about them. They may personalize your experience and begin talking about their own. Now, this doesn't mean that they're trying to be selfish. It could just mean that they're trying to create some sort of connection through shared experience with you. But sometimes we get that wrong too. And so just don't be surprised when, if you're trying to talk to someone or it just comes up, maybe somebody approaches you and they begin talking about their own experience with losing someone. And they may assume that your experience is their experience. And I don't think it's so unusual. So just don't be shocked if that happens. It can happen. Often people in very caring ways will come to you wanting to help you. And they may say, what do you need? What do you need? What can I do for you? How can I help? And the simple truth is you may not know what you need. You may have no idea what would actually help you. And I think that's okay, because it's a highly variable, weird experience to go through. And so when people ask, sometimes you might feel a little pressure to try to have an answer for that, but I don't think you need to. I think just being aware that I don't know what I need is a perfectly natural and, in my opinion, acceptable response when someone asks you that. This one I think is interesting. We can think that going through this can bring out the worst in people. And sometimes that's true, especially in families. Families are complicated, right? And so sometimes when we get siblings or parents, then it can bring out the worst in us. But what I think really is more accurate is that it brings out the most fundamental parts of our personalities and makes them incredibly stronger. I used to say that it's kind of like it makes us all the orange juice concentrate versions of ourselves. And so if our tendency is to get real fighty in that fight or flight thing, then we may do that a lot. If our tendency is to shut down or to avoid conflict or to take care of others, then those instincts tend to become amplified in us in this particular stress. And so you might notice that in yourself and in others in those moments. And just being aware that whatever your instincts are, it might make them stronger. And so just be aware of that. Also, your mental health may suffer. I don't know how it could not when you're losing someone that you care about. I think it's natural for our mental health to suffer. Now, that may look a lot of different ways. Sometimes we have trouble with sleep. Sometimes our sleep patterns get really weird. Sometimes our eating patterns really change. I think it can have a big impact on our focus and concentration. So I don't think it would be surprising for someone's performance at work or school to suffer somewhat. And so there are lots of ways this can show up. But it doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you're selfish. It means that it's a very natural thing for our mental health to suffer. And when we have cancer caregiving couples of some organization, when one person is having mental health struggles, it's very common for the other one to also have mental health struggles. I think the last data I saw was that like 80% of cancer caregiving couples, when one person is having mental health troubles, the other one does as well. And again, when you're going through such a profound loss and a time of profound sadness and grief, I don't know how it could not affect your mental health. So if you sense that it is, or maybe you're just having weird things come up that you don't really think of as related to your mental health, maybe you think of it through that lens and see what you get. Number 7, and I think this is definitely one of those if you know kinds of things. When someone you love is going through a prolonged illness, likely to die soon, or maybe not likely to die soon, it may be down the road a little bit, I think we reach a point, I know I did, and many others that I've talked to in this experience have said the same thing. You reach a point where you kind of wonder what to wish for. You don't quite know what you really want for, because on one hand, you don't want to lose this person. On the other hand, you don't want them to have to suffer any more than they have to. And so it can seem really weird to think about this idea of wanting someone that we love and care about to die. It can be very confusing, and I think the first time I had that thought about my mom, I felt like the worst person ever. And it seems very weird until the time comes, and then it makes perfect sense. And so if you're kind of in that transition, cut yourself a break, because this is a very natural thing. And just remember that two things can be true, right? You can be very sad and be very connected and want the best for someone, and you can also want them. You can not want to lose them. At the same time, you can want them to not suffer. Both those things can be true at the same time. And I think when we understand that, it makes that a little more easy to tolerate, okay? So those are the 7 things that, in my experience, again, both as a clinician, but really primarily as someone who's been through it, these things that can kind of come up in ourselves and in our relationships. Now, let's talk for a second about some things that I would encourage anyone going through this to think about. I think the first one, I've already said it, but I'm going to repeat for emphasis, don't be surprised when these happen. I carry this belief that it's not bad news that actually upsets people most of the time, it's surprises. And so when we don't see these things coming, it's like a sack of nickels to the face, right? But when we kind of anticipate it, or we've heard this could happen, which is why I'm making this video, to be honest, then I think maybe we're not quite as shocked, and it's still not our favorite thing to have happen, but maybe it gets a little easier for us. I would say don't demand that you know what you need in any given moment. Just give yourself the time and space to kind of be. And when you're able to do that, over time, you work those things out. I will say that when you're in that space, oftentimes the last thing you want to do is go to the movies with someone. I get that, right? But at the same time, there's incredible value to our mental health in social connection. So I would say, as you're able, with the people that you trust to manage this, try to stay socially connected if you can, even if it's just in little bits, right? The tendency sometimes is to hole ourselves up away from the world, or to try to spend every last moment with this person that we know we're going to lose soon. But I think there's a lot of benefit in staying social for a lot of us. So I just want to encourage you, and I would encourage anyone for that under any circumstances. Do consider getting some therapy, even if you've never done therapy before, and that seems like a really weird thing to you. It doesn't have to be with someone like me, a therapist. That could actually be, I say therapy, right, but get some support. So maybe it is a therapist. There are a lot of wonderful therapists who specialize in this very thing. They specialize in grief. And so that's something I would recommend. But maybe it's not a therapist. Maybe it's a religious leader or a mentor or just someone you trust to be able to kind of sit there and be with you and not kind of throw all their own stuff into it, right? We have a saying in my field, don't just say something, sit there. And sometimes that's the best thing you can do. So maybe you just try to find someone who can just be present with you. You'll figure out what works for you. But I would say, don't be afraid to pick up that phone and try to set up an appointment with a therapist who specializes in grief. That can be extraordinarily helpful. And the last one I would say is, this is kind of in the self-compassion category. Hey, don't be afraid to just unhook from the stressors in your life as you're able. You're probably not going to be able to show up to work and in your other relationships as effectively as you would like. Hopefully, the other people in your life will get that, and hopefully the other people in your life will give you some space to work things out, right? So I would say, don't be afraid to just, say, you know what, I don't have the bandwidth for that right now. And I think as long as you're able to kind of hold it together with your work and other responsibilities, parenting, if that's a thing for you, I know you got to hold it together, but I think there's a middle ground there, where sometimes if we can just make some critical decisions and learn how to say no. Remember, no is a complete sentence. And learn how to say no. And hopefully there will be some opportunity for you to do that. Okay, friends, that's it for today. I hope you found this helpful. This is a little different than the videos I normally make here on my channel. I don't think I've made a video on this topic yet, but I think it is about relationships, and so I think it fits. If this feels familiar to you, and if you feel so inclined to drop a comment below or maybe a like, if this has been meaningful for you, then please do that. It helps this video reach other folks. Okay, thanks for being here. Wish you all the best if you are going through this, and take care.